You pay the salary of judges, and they put the average person in jail. If big business doesn't pay taxes, they're not paying the salary of the judges. You're paying it, and you're being put in jail. They own the broadcasting companies, the newspapers, and all the newspapers do is uphold the institutions that support them. People pay for ads in the newspapers. They pay for time on television. And the television newscast sings the song of the establishment, not the song of the majority of people. It appears that the majority of people are very disappointed in the government, sort of a do-nothing government. But they've been hoodwinked by that government, and they think that the government's working for them. They are not. The government's working for the establishment, meaning the wealthy and the powerful. They control everything. Getting back to the Venus Project, a lot of people don't know yet how decisions are arrived at. They say, well, who makes the decisions on the Venus Project? Is it Fresco? No, it's not. The survey committee does a survey first of a given area. How much arable land, how much water they have on that particular area or state. And that determines the size of the city. If you just build an enormous city in a state that has very little water, they can't water their plants, they can't grow food. So you have to do a survey first, find out what you have in terms of technical personnel, water, and arable land. And also, if you don't allow for people living there, you can't put as many people as you like in any state. It has to coincide with the resources of that state. The same thing about the continental United States, and all over the world they have the same problem. The first thing you have to do is a survey to see what you have, how much arable land, how much water you have. That determines how large a city can be, not Fresco. Fresco doesn't decide anything. It's decided by the survey committee. So if you keep bringing lots of people over the United States who work for less money than the American people, you're spreading the purchasing power out, and they earn less and they can buy less. So you see, you can't really gain anything. But if you really decide, well, I think I'll ship my processes to China. I'll build a factory in China because people work for less. That means more unemployment in the United States. It means that if there's more unemployment and you don't give them a check or a food stamp to operate by, they will break the windows on the supermarket and take the food they need. Revolution is caused by deprivation. It isn't just something that happens. It isn't that people are radical. It's that they're not provided for. And if they're not provided for, you will have problems. Now, even when the states were divided, the states used to have a militia at the border to prevent other states from impinging on their territory. Once the states joined together, the government agreed that each state area was so many square miles or thousands of square miles. Once all the states joined together, the militias disappeared and the territorial disputes disappeared. You cannot end territorial disputes by saying, be obedient to the designated lines drawn by the states. They will not. If they run out of water, a certain state runs low in water, they will invade the nearest state that has water. If not for themselves, they'll do it for their children. We now have to consider everybody. We have to consider all nations, and all nations have to have equal participation in the distribution of the Earth's resources without any artificial boundaries that separate people. Now you say, well, how do you do that? I'm just telling you, if you don't do that, you're going to have the problems, they're going to continue. No one makes decisions in the future except the survey committee. They tell us what's available and what we can do. When it comes to transportation, Sometimes if energy sources are, say, 1,000 miles away, and you have to transport coal and oil a long distance, you have to include the energy expenditure in bringing the coal to an area. You have to include the building of oil platforms, not just the energy you get from oil. You have to include the energy expended in building oil platforms, in transporting oil, in educating people, pump oil up from the ground, that's special training, and all that has to be included in the cost of getting extraneous energy from around. So in the future, I would say that geothermal energy is available in many places under the ocean. So if you build cities in the ocean, you can tap geothermal energy deep in the ocean and bring it up and operate cities. It doesn't depend on sunshine, whereas photovoltaic energy depends on sunshine. With long overcast, you cannot generate sufficient energy, but it's better than burning fossil fuels. If you include in the burning of fossil fuels the oil spills, the money it costs to clean it up, you have to put that in the cost. So you don't just get energy from oil. There's lots of damage the oil does, and that has to be included in the cost. If you fail to take that into account, you're not doing the correct accounting. So we're saying this: geothermal energy is available. There are other sources of possible energy other than solar. There are wave power, wind power. There's also underwater currents. There are streams deep in the ocean that move north and south. We can tap that. There's all kinds of nutrients in the ocean we can tap. There's all kinds of fertilizers available we can manufacture from upwelling in the oceans. There are many different sources of energy, but we have to do a lot of work to arrive at those sources, to develop them. I just want to say another thing about research, scientific research. When you think about it again, when you try to dig up nickels and dimes for research on cancer or heart disease, that's not the best you can do. The best you can do is establish a resource-based economy and give every lab whatever the hell it needs. In microscopes, physical equipment, no more digging up nickels and dimes for research in heart disease, cystic fibrosis, cancer, or anything else that troubles society. All the world has common problems. We must engage in serving all the world's people. Now, if you don't do that, you're going to have war, territorial disputes, loss of life, bombing of cities. You have to include all that in the cost of the war. Try to do that in World War II. During World War II, we bombed Germany flat. We bombed England. England was bombed. America wasn't touched, really. Japan was flattened out. When you know, not only include the cost of 400 ships on the bottom of the sea, but what did those ships contain before they were sunk? They contained iron ore, structural materials, jeeps, automobiles, weapons of war. And so when you sink a ship, you have to order more weapons. When you include the cost of the war, you must also factor in the veterans that come home that have to be treated for the rest of their lives medically. You must include that cost also. So the cost of war is really abominable, shameful. So if you consider the cost of war, if the nations were to spend that money, all the nations fighting each other, on helping one another, imagine how far ahead the world would be. There'd be no destruction, no sinking of ships, no loss of lives, no medical care for veterans. You can use all that money to take care of people. So how stupid can you be? The Pentagon, the military people, are trained in military technology. If we had anything to do with the Venus Project, we would teach people how to become problem solvers instead of killing machines. Soldiers are trained to be killing machines. They don't solve problems. They build a cumulative hatred over the period of time for killing so many people. When you kill Arabs or bomb their cities, they may not be able to fight back now, but at a later date they will. So you're only manufacturing hatred. War is a supreme failure of nations' ability to solve the difference between opposing nations. The difference is always access to resources. All people need access to clean air, clean water, arable land, and a relevant education. They all need the same thing. Imagine what would happen if we trained police officers and soldiers to become problem solvers rather than arresting people. In the Venus Project, there are no prisons, no police, no armies, no navies. We have problem solvers. We don't have a Pentagon in Washington. We have a building that looks like a Pentagon, comprised of sociologists, social psychologists, and they try to bridge the difference between nations rather than kill. This is essentially what the Venus Project is about, finding solutions to problems, not military solutions, not boycott of nations, not depriving people of food, clothing, shelter, housing. When you have a recession, you got to think of all the people that lose their houses, lose their jobs, and sleeping in empty lots, which is a burden to society. Not only that, the crime rate moves up too when people are unemployed. So you have to ask yourself, what kind of world do you want and what do you have to do to get it? Politicians cannot solve problems. I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to confront politicians that you respect and ask them, how can you grow more food to feed the world? They don't know. How can you prevent automobile accidents? They have no solutions. How can you prevent war? They don't even know that. They think there'll always be war and rumors of war, and you will always have to prepare for war. Yes, you do. If few nations control most of the Earth's resources, you have to prepare for war. But if you share your resources and knowledge, you don't. The Venus Project is trying to point a way out of our dilemma. You cannot stop crime by saying, say no to drugs. As long as people make minimum wage and struggle and have hypertension, and you have that amongst most of the poor, they're under tension. They're under tremendous pressure. And putting them under tremendous pressure produces more physical ailments and disorders. When people have access to healthy food, not contaminated with artificial coloring, artificial flavoring, genetic engineering, without testing the food over a long period of time, you're going to have more problems in the future. As you probably know, cancer is growing, hypertension is growing, heart disease is on the increase. So you're not getting anywhere with this system. Even the wealthiest people will be better off in a resource-based economy. This is the best I can say for it. So all of your artificial laws made by man do not work. Religion has not worked. Religion did not make people decent and honest. I'm going to try to prove that to you. If you're truly religious and you have a better way of producing vacuum cleaners or radios, if you share that with another company, you lose your competitive edge. So you can't even practice religion in a monetary society because the bottom line is profit. And as long as the bottom line is profit, not people, you cannot truly be religious. So I would suggest that you get the book by, read it. There's all kinds of questions and answers in that book. And that book will tell you how the transition will work. Cybernation means to automate all boring and monotonous jobs, like a girl standing behind a counter in a department store. The best years of her life selling cosmetics or clothing. That isn't using her head. We can automate all boring, monotonous jobs and free people from that activity. If you type for a corporation for 20 years, all you got in your head is corporate letters. That doesn't help human beings. We want to give human beings the ability to invent, solve problems, make recommendations, to make the city more efficient. You know, today, that if you go to a shopping mall, you see mostly high school kids and college kids because they have no place to go. They need art centers, music centers that are free. They need universities that will train them in engineering, science, agriculture, not business administration. When you're trained to be a banker or investment banker, you don't contribute anything to the country. Oh, they think they do when they lend money at interest. That's not the contribution. Only when you're an agriculturist, a geologist, can you really make contributions. When you're in some branch of the physical sciences, robotics, automation, then you can make contributions. But politicians are not trained in any particular area. Therefore, the history of American presidents, not one of them ever made any useful contribution to the world, such as increasing agricultural yield, protecting the oceans from oil spills and other dangerous things that kill the source of food that people depend on. No politician ever worked out a system for transmitting electricity over great distances without power losses. This is what's needed, solutions to problems, not politics. Although politics was good 100 years ago, today it can accomplish nothing except waste money. They have no knowledge about anything specific to make the world a better place. I hope you think about these things instead of asking me, will I be able to play the banjo in the future? You'll be able to do whatever you want in the future except hurt other people. An elderly Jewish man once asked me whether we would permit tradition in the future. I asked him whether he would permit tradition. He said, of course. I said to him, the Ku Klux Klan meets once a month for at least 60 years. Is that okay with you? He said, no. Then how do you decide which tradition will be installed? Everybody wants their own tradition. Everybody wants other people to change. They don't want to do the changing. Let's change other people to fit our value system. And that will never work. You cannot go to the Arab world and say you only take one wife instead of a dozen wives. Remember, the more money you have, the more wives you can afford. You can't walk into a country and demand that they see things your way. You have to gradually educate people to the advantages and use of technology and the disadvantage of banks, investment, advertising, and all the fields such as lawyers, which do absolutely nothing. Lawyers can take language and twist it around, do whatever they want, get a conviction. If you can't afford a capable lawyer, a very skillful lawyer, you might lose. So the more money you have, the more protection you can secure. If you don't understand this, when you put up $500,000 to get somebody elected to political office, you owe them or they owe you a favor. So you don't have a neutral political body. That's main concern is the people of America. Their main concern is the bottom line, and that's profit. If you still don't understand this, if you design a tire that'll last 50 years, Goodrich or some other tire company may buy that patent from you, but they won't turn out the tire because it'll put them out of business. Did you know that engineers today are actually paid to design things to last just a little longer than the warranty? They design things to wear out and break down. It's called planned obsolescence. Now, this is good for business, but it's not good for inventors. In other words, we paid inventors not to invent. We paid farmers not to grow food. We pay the Department of Agriculture to find how to increase the agricultural yield, but then we pay farmers not to grow things, to keep them scarce. If you keep them scarce, they plow on the food, they maintain scarcity. If you maintain scarcity, you can get a higher price. The system does not work for the benefit of people. Another thing, Smedley Butler, a top military man, wrote a book called War is a Racket. Don't you understand that when they conscript the lives of young men, that they put up their lives for this country, they should conscript all the war industries so no one makes a profit out of war. As long as there's profit in war, you're going to have big business swelling their guts with what they make on war. They get billions of dollars for aircraft carriers, submarines, freighters, weapons of war, anti-aircraft guns, aircraft, bombs. All that is a money-making schedule system. In order to avoid war, you have to take the profit out of war. And remember that soldiers do not make a profit in war. They get the minimum income and food. But if you conscript men, you must conscript all the war industries. As they say, if you buy war bonds, that'll bring Johnny home faster. Then you have to conscript all the money to bring Johnny home fast. If Johnny puts his life up for the country, you owe Johnny your survival. Think about that. All the soldiers make it possible for American industry to survive, but they don't want to give them pensions. They don't want to give them food stamps. They want to cut that out. All these soldiers put up their lives so you can exist. You owe them survival. You owe them medical care. And all the people that work for years, some doctors say, well, I had to go to college to become a doctor. I deserve more money. Well, what about the men that work in a coal mine? If they don't work in a coal mine, if they don't produce coal, you can't keep your house warm. Everybody's important. In a resource-based economy, we have enough resources so everyone can live very well. A lot of people don't seem to understand that. When you waste money on maintaining aircraft, military system, aircraft carriers, all that costs money. It's cheaper to give people and make the necessities of life available to everybody. And if you do that, you don't have crime. If people have access to the necessities of life, they do not steal. They only steal when they're deprived. Only if you do away with money, in which you can't pay off congressmen, you can't buy judges, you can't pay off gangsters. Only if you do away with money can you have a society that's more nearly the democratic society that you're told that you live in. You do not live in a democracy. You're as democratic as your purchasing power. You don't live in the house you want to live in. You live in what you can afford. You don't drive the car you want. You drive what you can afford. And that goes for clothing and everything else. You don't wear the kind of clothing you like. You don't belong to the club you want to belong to. You belong to what you can afford. And so you don't take a world cruise. If you paid your help $1,000 a week, minimum wage, they'd go off. They'd take their family on a cruise. They wouldn't show up Monday for work. Why should they? Well, you pay them minimum wage, they have to show up for work. Don't you see that? That you're trapped in a system where those people that earn maximum money want that system maintained. They want to keep things as they are so that they will maintain control. When you march in front of an agency like the stock exchange, that doesn't change anything. They control the police, and the police arrest hundreds of people that committed no crime at all. They arrest them, put them in jail. Do you know who pays the police salary? The people marching front, the people that own the establishment don't pay any taxes. I know, but I have to emphasize that again because a lot of people don't seem to understand that. You are paying for the Army, the Navy, the police, the National Guard, not the rich. They don't pay any taxes. Use your head. Think about it. They're told that you live in the best system in the world. You live in a free society where people can do what they want to do and vote for whomever they want to. This is not true. The people that are put in political office are put there to keep things as they are. They're not put there to change things. Think about that. No government ever changed things. People, when they're abused and don't get the necessities of life, the medical care, they fight for social change. But they don't know how to fight for social change. They think by voting for a Democrat or Republican, you're going to get a difference. They're both really the same thing. They both uphold the political and social institutions that are dominant today. Yes, the same thing occurs all over the world. All governments, all of them, are corrupt. They have to be in order to maintain the competitive edge. If a country doesn't try to maintain the competitive edge, they would lose it. If you pay your help more than the minimum wage and I outsource to China, I will get more investors than you can get. You can't make money in this system unless you outsource to other countries. They outsource to improve the profit margin. They don't care about American workers. If they did, they wouldn't outsource. Don't you see that? Their main concern is profit, not people. And as long as you have that, you have a decaying society that will come to an end. Now let's say that the Venus Project doesn't succeed. Even if it doesn't succeed, if industry installs more and more automation and the public doesn't have purchasing power, the system will fail anyway. And what they try to do is use the Army and Navy. They use them to install fascism. Fascism is the last stand of the free enterprise system. We are moving toward an American brand of fascism. That means control of the working people by force. We send armies into other countries and they tell the public that we're sending the army in to bring democracy. That's not true. We send the army in because they have oil or resources or cheap labor. We don't send it to bring democracy. We never have and never did. Where do you think we got this territory? We stole it from the Indians. Where do you think Britain got all the land they have control over? They stole it. Where do you think Japan got all the islands? Or Germany? Now they're trying to take back some of the islands that we stole. I told you before, I'll tell you again, George Washington had 300 slaves. Today he'd be arrested. All these people that you admire, all your politicians are nudniks. They know nothing. They don't know how to solve problems. That's why you're in the predicament you're in now. 80% of the people disapprove of government today, but they have no voice, obviously. Isn't it obvious to you yet that you have to change the way we operate our social system? Look into the Venus Project, thevenusproject.com.
Go ahead.
Those of you that don't know enough about it, if you really want further information, look us up on the website and read our books, look at our tapes, so that you have information, so you can impart that information to people that know nothing about it. Whenever they say, is the Venus Project a participatory democracy? Did you vote for the Vietnam War? Of course not. Did you vote for the design of the Capitol building? Of course. People who are afraid of technology because it might displace them at work. Technology is coming whether you like it or not. In other words, it isn't technology that you should be wary of. It's the misuse and abuse of technology. When we use it to make atom bombs, what can you solve with atom bombs? We have enough atom bombs in America to flatten the earth out many times over again. What can you accomplish with that? Make the earth radioactive? They built a place for the senators where they can go for 6 months. and there's enough food to feed them for 6 months, what do you come out to? A radioactive environment? How stupid can you be? The Pentagon is not a problem-solving organization. It's a militaristic approach to problems, and that never did work. We've had wars ever since man has been on Earth. We've had wars continuously, and deprivation and destruction. War is not the answer. The Venus Project offers a possible solution. If you cannot understand it, write in your questions and ask questions that you feel I have not answered. I do not always find that in the questions people ask. A lot of people don't even know what the question is. The question is, who makes the decisions? The answer, no one. We arrive at them by testing systems. We build an experimental city to test the validity of a Venus Project's claims. We build ships that do not sink or spill oil. We test them first. It's the same thing we do with airplanes and everything else. But the aircraft industry gives contracts to the lowest bidder, and the lowest bidder uses the cheapest material they can get away with. We use the best material. We design things not to wear out and break down. It's called planned obsolescence. When you do that, you hurt the American people. So what we have to do is design a new culture, not try to patch up this one. Patching up this culture does nothing except it prolongs the date of collapse. So I'm saying to you, if you don't educate people in the methods of science, not scientists, because they too work for the establishment. They get paid when they're chemists if they work for the drug companies. So we had the Pure Food and Drug Administration in the past monitor the claims of other corporations. Today, most of the people that work at the drug companies now work for the Pure Food and Drug Administration. They've invaded all the areas that used to protect people. Don't you see that the monetary system, by its very nature, tends to do that? They tend to grab all they can grab by paying the least amount of money in taxes or social betterment. Don't you understand that? And if you do understand that, you must educate people with the knowledge you have about this system and how vicious it is, not just in America, all over the world. America is one of the most corrupt nations in the world. I was born here. I love this country. That's why I speak this way.
If anyone has any questions, you can ask them now.
So I would have a question that is not on the topic for today, but a guy from a Russian group asks, he thinks he has an idea for building houses with ferromagnetic fluids, and he says you can transport this fluid over the pipes, and he asks what Jacque thinks about it.
You'll have to explain the system he has a little bit more.
This is enough of the answer because because he explained it to me this way.
Can you repeat that again then?
This is enough the answer because he didn't tell me more. He just said what Jacque thinks about ferromagnetic in house construction.
Right now, I think you ought to talk to people about the Venus Project. The methods of construction are already worked out. We don't have a problem in that area. Our problem is convincing people that this system is obsolete, not the questions related to production in the future. That is irrelevant to the present time.
Thanks.
I have a question. Could Jacque describe the first few months of a child's life under this project? For example, is that going to be automated, or how does that work?
You caught some of that, Shun. What is it that you're asking will be automated?
The first few months of a child's life, right after it's born, how does that work? I know you guys say we have to raise children to get a certain result. I was reading on your website.
We raise them in a crib, just like any other child. And we raise them with a cover over the crib so that visitors cannot bring the physical disorders to the children by coughing in their presence, which they don't have sufficient resistance. They're brought up in a sanitary environment.
Other people that... You want to try that again?
The children are given the most nutritional food we can develop without artificial coloring or flavoring or genetic engineering. We feed the children the best, and we treat all children the same way. They're brought up in a quiet environment where they can sleep, where the parents also have to go to school to learn how to feed children and how to raise them to avoid the production of jealousy and envy. All that is manufactured by people that don't know how to raise children. You know, before you fly an airplane, they put you in a dummy plane to see if you can work the controls, but they allow any person to raise children. And children are the most complex system we know of, and they have to be raised according to certain knowledge. They have to be fed a good diet so they're not overweight or underweight. They have to be brought up in an environment that gives them a sense of security and well-being. If you don't do that, you're going to get aberrated child behavior. We are not going to take the children away from parents. We're going to send the parents to school or show them on TV just how the best way for raising a child that's cooperative, smart, able to put things together, and not get into arguments. We will teach them that. We have a very many different processes for teaching children how to become cooperative with one another, how to understand one another, and communicate without making a fist or without wanting to beat up the other child, without jealousy, without envy.
Any other questions?
I have a question. I know that everyone in the Venus Project at the moment who's contributing is doing a very good job and trying their hardest. I was just wondering, is there any new sources of information on what you guys are up to at the moment, or what you're hoping to branch out in the future, like Activision teams, what your plans are for those?
Andrew, you want to talk about the design teams and and some of the teams?
On the Venus Project website, under Get Involved, you'll see the various team categories that we've got, which is TVP Core, TVP Design, and TVP Support. There are various projects within each of those teams, such as, for example, the writing team's got sort of 5 or 6 projects that they're trying to get started and need people to contribute on. The same with the Venus Expressions Media team. They've got various projects that they're trying to get started. You can find out more about that through the Venus Expressions Media website or through Alfred and Benjamin Courtin, who's doing some of the projects there as well. TVP Design, we've got 3 main projects that we're sort of starting to develop now, just basically building up the structure for those different projects. One of them's 3D production, to start doing all the 3D work that we were doing over the last couple of years, but had to stop because we were developing the global teams. So we're going to get that started again soon. We've got the architectural team, which will be pulling a lot of the architects from our global scientific and technical database and getting them to work directly with Jacque on his concept sketches and start developing those up into plans, sections, elevations, etc. So yeah, there's quite a few projects sort of in the early stages that we're developing. And also on the TVP activism side, we don't really want to be a kind of dictatorship where we're telling you, what you have to do. Tomorrow you've got to go and do this, and next week you've got to go and do that. We want it to be a lot more open-ended, so that the TVP activism teams themselves can discuss ideas of how to promote this best, around the world. What works in some countries might not work in others. For example, street promotion works very well in the more Western sort of, cultures, but in some of the Eastern cultures you can't get away with that. You'll get arrested. So it's really all down to the individual teams within the activism as to what they actually do to get this sort of direction promoted. We've got lots of downloads on the website where you can download things like flyers, brochures, posters that we used at Z-Day last year. We also used them for the Eindhoven exhibition in 2009. What else we got up there? We've got banners and all sorts of things. So you can use some of these things, such as presentations and stuff that's going up there now, to use them in your local community. You know, try and get yourself some university talks or something. You know, getting universities to talk about the Venus Project, talk about, you know, real sustainability of our whole social economic system, rather than just sustainable buildings or sustainable gardens. Or it's really down to each of us to sort of work out what needs doing and what the best ways of doing those are.
Thanks, Andrew.
I have a very quick question. Some time ago, you wanted to move to maybe Peru, Ecuador. Are you still looking to do that?
That was quite a while ago. We were looking in Ecuador. We were trying to sell the land here because it really is pretty costly to maintain, since I lost my business after the mortgage crisis, depended on the building business, and all the building fell apart in Florida. So we were looking to sell this place and move. We were looking around at different places to move to. We were thinking of Ecuador, not so much Peru. We visited Ecuador. But since we couldn't sell this place and we're trying to make it work, we are not moving because of that reason. But if we had a chance to do a larger research center or a city, we would certainly move anywhere.
Roxanne got some questions at the bottom, if you check my tab.
Is the United Nations insufficient and should be strengthened, or should it be abolished completely, the United Nations?
I don't think it should be abolished. I think that someone is trying to arrange a meeting between the Venus Project people and a presentation to the UN. That is, several people are working on that. If it comes to pass, the United Nations could become very useful. Right now, the United Nations should not be abolished. It's the nearest thing to a gathering of people that represent people from all over the world. What they need is information to show how all nations can work together. They don't have that information yet.
With respect to current world affairs, what does Jacque think about the state of the collapse? Does he think we're any closer to the system reaching a point where people say it's time for something really different, or have we just begun? Do we have a very long way to go still?
I'm sorry you had to wait a little longer till the majority of people lose confidence in the people they elected. When they lose confidence and they rebel, the great majority of people take over, because the country is operated by a minority of wealthy people. It's not operated by the majority of Americans, although a lot of them have been brainwashed to think that the people in charge are working in their behalf. They are not. The rest of the world has the same problem. Things have to get so bad that people want change. Until that day, you can't do anything. When most people support the Venus Project and recommend that it be installed, it'll be installed. If you don't talk to other people about it and try to increase the membership in the Venus Project's proposal, then you'll see nothing. You have to work at it. The harder you work at it, the smoother the transition. If you do nothing, nothing will occur.
In regard to decision making, you earlier used the term a survey committee. The question that I would expect following use of that term would be who sits on the survey committee. Increasingly, I myself and others in advocacy of the Venus Project are using the term infometrics-based decisions, which would be decisions based on information and data analysis. My question is, does Jacque have any criticism or any objection to use of the term infometrics-based decisions?
I have no objection to that term. I'm just saying if the public says all roofs ought to be made of stainless steel, we don't have enough stainless steel to make all roofs of it. The survey committee will tell us what we have. And so that'll determine whether most buildings are made of composites, concrete, or whatever is available in a given area. It isn't Fresco that makes any decision. The survey committee, all they do is tell us what's available and what is not available, what has to be made, what doesn't have to be made. How many hospitals do you build? That depends on what percentage of the population needs hospitalization, not some opinion of some doctor. The survey committee tells us how many people need dental care, medical care, and that determines how many buildings, how many hospitals we name.
What about a new global language that is free of interpretation? What's the language to speak and write in the resource-based economy?
And that comes after the change. You can't introduce a new language now, don't worry about it. But the idea is to get people over toward the Venus Project. And if they advocate the direction of the Venus Project, and majority of people start building the first city, we will build it anywhere that any country wants it built. If it's, say, some country decides on it, we will recommend that they support the Venus Project, not some interpretation of it. The Venus Project includes all countries, all nations.
I'd just like to ask, have you guys made any progress in contacting people with respect to the film?
We are certainly working on that in regards to the film. We have had meetings. We have meetings coming up. We have a film producer in Florida that we just made contact with. We have several people that we're talking to about the script, but we've already had a lot of people approach us in regards to the script, but nobody's really...
Stick around.
But nobody's really clean enough or had enough knowledge about this so far. We wrote with it didn't come up to par with what we were looking for. So we are working on all that constantly. So far, there's nothing specific to announce in regard to it.
Okay, I'd just like to know, is there anything we as members of the Venus Project activism that we can do to help promote or try to get someone to help you make this film? There are a lot of ideas that people have been speaking of. I don't know if they were ever presented to you. What do you think about organizing a video shout out for the people of the world to ask, to say that we need someone to make this film, stuff like that? What do you think about things like that?
Well, if you can join our media group, and we are making lists of different people that we think might identify with this direction in terms of producers and script writers, and we are getting in touch with them. We would welcome anybody who's trying to put feelers out for those who think they can contact, who might identify with this direction and want to work with us in that regard. So that would be great. We're also looking for stock footage, preferably HD, because we're working on an introductory film to the Venus Project. We are looking for stock footage in HD of war, poverty, hunger, crime, deprivation, that type of thing, environmental degradation, for a video that we want to put up for free and have people pass out for free in terms of what is the Venus Project, so people can help in that regards as well.
You guys have an ETA on that? An estimated time on that?
Well, it's hard to tell. We just finished the narration, finished the script, and we're starting to lay out footage. We're looking for stock footage on the areas that we mentioned. Hard to tell. There's so many interruptions and meetings and things that go on here, but we're working at it. Several people are working at it here. There's one question here. Can Jacque talk a bit about respect? Did you want to answer that?
No, there's nothing I can say. It's just a word. By respect, you don't need to be respected. If you're an architect, an engineer, and you build bridges, all people will be of service in the future. There'll be no parasitic professions. So you'll be happy to meet anyone because they all work to try to make the world a better place. Yeah, well, we have a plan already worked out, and that's the building the first city. If they can't support the financial requirements of that during the transition, we have nothing to say. Only if they have land and they wish to donate it, or they wish to donate equipment to put up the first city, yes. Other than that, it's just a verbal hobby.
That was in regards to please describe steps that society can take after enough people get educated about the Venus Project.
You don't have to worry about that. It's no problem.
What does Jacque have to say on the issue of patents?
There are no patents. All ideas belong to all the world's people after the establishment of the Venus Project's proposal.
I'll say this person wants you to talk about your inventions and contributions in the aircraft industry or the medical instruments or the like.
And that is not a question related to the Venus Project.
He's saying, I tend to introduce Jacque to people as most likely to have used at least one of Jacque's inventions in their life. It's kind of amazing to see the broad range of expertise he has. Yes, Jacque's a multidisciplinarian. He worked in many different fields.
When you work for a company, they own everything you think of. Did you know that? If you work for General Electric, it says, and now General Electric brings you. If I work for doctors and they take out the patents, they claim to be the inventors. I've invented many medical devices, but patented by private doctors.
Person is saying that today, and he thinks this might be irrelevant to a resource-based economy, but today it's relevant because people still cling to their reputations and the public image. If you wanted to say anything about your background. The resume is on the website.
You can gain all the information you want to if you look it up on the website.
Sorry, I just wanted to say a quick one on that actually while you mentioned that, Jacque. There is absolutely tons and tons and tons of information on the websites. There is numerous hours of Q&As, previous Q&As, where nearly every single question that's been asked has been answered. It would take you 45 minutes to an hour to go through one of those Q&As and get all the answers to many of the questions that you ask on a weekly basis. And if you'd done that once every couple of days and just went through all of the Q&As, you shouldn't have any questions left after that, you know. Pretty much everything's been covered, you know. When you go through the frequently asked questions on the website, when you go through all of the texts, that, you know, Jacque and Roxanne have spent hundreds and hundreds of hours writing out these texts, doing all these videos, doing all these audios, doing all these Q&As. How much do you want them to put into this without putting in your piece as well? The information's there, please use it, please go through the website, please try and think about we can't come here every week and ask questions that are the same questions over and over and over every single week because we haven't bothered to go through the Q&As and stuff and look for it ourselves. You need to, we all need to be a bit more proactive in searching out this information. It's not like it's hidden all over the internet and we can't find it, it's on one website. Someone came to me the other day and said they can't find where the downloads are on the website. It's in the top menu, and right in front of your face when you go to the website. Please just be a bit more proactive and try and actually search out this information. It's all there for you.
There was one question here, thanks Andrew, but there was one question here that I overlooked. How do you eliminate fear and make people more confident so that one does not have stage fright? Is that environmental or condition?
I can tell you how to eliminate fear in presenting ideas and not have stage fright. You have stage fright because you're afraid of the audience. You're trying to appeal to them. You're trying to get them to like you. Don't worry about the audience. Deliver the information. They don't know a lot of things. You have to inform the public as to what the Venus Project is. You don't get up there to win approval. That's something else. That's the kind of training you get today. How to win friends and influence people. The scientists that found out the Earth was round by instrument, not opinion. They didn't go up to people and say, it's a little round and a little flat, and they get all kinds of people that would like what they said. Science doesn't give a hoot of what people think. You deliver the information. If you find out that certain parasites cause disease, you have no stage fright because you're giving them information they need. It's when you think of yourself, how will they react to what I say? I'm afraid that they may reject me. If they reject you, your presentation was not good enough. So your presentation is more important. You have to present people, look, if you're on a stage and the building catches fire, and you say to all the people, you better exit as quickly as you can because there's a fire in this portion of the building. You don't have stage fright because you're giving them information. But when you speak to people to win approval, you have stage fright. Not when you deliver information. You don't have stage fright.
Okay, another question here. Is a resource-based economy going to have hierarchical power structures, or is it promoting a flat organizational model? How do you deal with people's egotism and love of power? It's all the same question.
And it's always the same question.
No, I just mean that's just...
First of all, in the schools and the training that we give to architects, engineers, there's usually a director of the project. The director of the project carries out the blueprint. In other words, when you give an architect a blueprint or a contractor a blueprint, he carries out that project. When you give a chemist an assignment, he carries out the project. He doesn't dictate to the public what his views are on chemistry or anything else. When you have a bridge built, the engineers that build a bridge will ask questions. How much traffic goes over the bridge? How much traffic daily will go over the bridge? What kind of weight is involved? And that determines how thick the structural members are or what alloys they're made of. No bridge engineer tells the public what to do. They just work on bridges. And if you work on transportation systems, you ask what's available. Aluminum, stainless steel, how much? And when you tell them how much is available, they design things. And how much goods do you have to move from point A to point B? That determines what the design would be. Not Fresco, or not any single individual. The information that you impart to them tells them what they can do. In other words, if we don't have enough stainless steel to make a roof, waterproof roof, we work on other materials that are water resistant. And if we run out of materials, we assign the research lab the problem of developing materials that last long and are waterproof if we don't have enough material. We assign different labs, chemist labs, structural people, we assign them different assignments to carry out a given project. They don't do their own thing. Nobody does their own thing. They work with a survey committee. The survey committee says, we need hospitals that can take care of people. How many people? And they say, well, there's 2 million people today with cancer. What type of cancer? And they give a list and they design the facilities based on the survey. I hope you understand that. There's no dictatorship.
And also the direction is already set. Did you want to say something else?
All this business about is it the top down or the bottom up? All that's a stupid question. When you have a military problem, military people handle it. When your plumbing breaks down, you don't call an electrician, you call a plumber, because he knows more about it than you do. So you always call upon different people with experience to carry out what the survey committee gives them. The survey committee says we need 2 school buildings in this area. The survey committee has to know how many children are involved, how many teachers do you need, what facilities do you want in the school. And after all that information is gathered, the construction company puts it together.
And also the direction is already set forth. We want to house, feed, clothe people. First we need an energy systems to do all this. We need mass foods that are nutritious. We need clean environment for cities and where they live and how they interact. That's set forth for the well-being of people and the environment. That's totally different aims in this society. So that dictates what we're going to do. You know, if people identify with this direction and they want this, then they join with us and start working towards it.
Yes, exactly that. In other words, when you design an airplane, first of all, you have to know how many passengers the company wants to carry. They want to carry 500, 1,000, and then you give them an estimate of the cost. And if they agree, then you take it to the next stage. But we think in terms of a group of people advising us as to what's available, and we design things in accordance with what's available.
I have a question. Do you guys, Jacque, is there anything about your city designs or your city proposals or social structure that you have a problem with, or is there anything you haven't figured out yet? Because it's very difficult for me to find such things, and I don't want to be speaking to someone, an expert in a certain field, and just get a question out of left field, and I can't handle it. So, is there anything that you haven't worked out yet?
Well, what I'd like to work on, what you can work on, and that's preparing people to deliver information or lectures or presentations, and practice at your club meetings when you get together, have some person give a presentation of the Venus Project subject to criticism of the people listening to them. And when you feel they're polished enough and can answer any question, turn them loose and let them go and address different groups. Just say to the Rotary Club, there's now a speaker available that can present the Venus Project. High schools, universities, train people to present the Venus Project and test them out and offer criticism. When you ask them questions, if they can't answer it correctly, show them where they get the answers. And when they become proficient at it, turn them loose.
I have a question. It's kind of long-winded. Let's just say the system collapses and the Venus Project goes into being in, say, a week or a day's time. How do we organize current scientific and technical information regarding patents and so forth?
I didn't catch the beginning of that, I'm sorry. You're saying after the system collapses, how do we organize scientific materials such as patents and so forth?
Yeah, technical information regarding inventions.
We don't have any problems in that area. Our problem is for you to accumulate a list of architects, mechanical engineers, structural engineers. We'll call on them when the time comes to build a new city.
So Jacque never explained in detail how he changed his mother and the clan. I think he has many times in his videos. Maybe other people can use a similar approach to educate people around them.
When the head of the clan visited my lab, he was so impressed. He said to me, will you come on down to the clan meeting and talk to our boys about the way you think? And I said to Lou, who was the guy in charge of the clan, I said, they won't listen to me, Lou. He says, I'm in charge, I'll get them to listen to you. And that's what I had to do. I had to turn Lou around. When he said to me, he said, Jacque, you're a smart guy, what do you think of the clan? I said, it's a great idea, but it doesn't go far enough. That gets his ear. If you attack, you lose it. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's a great idea, but it doesn't go far enough. So that gets his ear. He wants to know, what do you mean? And you can talk to him about something. But don't attack. Don't say it's a deadly organization. It breeds hatred. They don't hear that. They'll get mad at you. And you cut out the relationship altogether. You had another question?
Yeah, he was asking for the details of how you change the clan, but Jacque goes into that on so many tours that he gives when people come here for introductory tours, when he speaks sometimes 5 or 6 hours. And a lot of people film that and put it up on the internet. So those are long stories, and I'm sure they're there somewhere. If not, if you don't find them, I guess we'll have to try and look for them. But if you don't find them, let me know, and we'll see if we can.
First thing you do is you identify with them. So they look at you as not their enemy. After you identify with them, you then present other information that you feel is needed. But you better package it in such a way that they can understand what you're talking about. You have to explain the methods of science and what it means. All that scientists do is they take material and they test it. You know, I'm sure you've seen this on television. The automobile companies build an automobile, then they run it into a brick wall to see how it holds up. If it doesn't hold up too well, they change the structure. That's all we do in the Venus Project. We put everything to test as best we can and come up with answers that survive the test.
So Jacque says that people have to lose faith in the system, but what about the third world countries in which the things are already too bad and nobody seems to be protesting the system or the politicians in the third world?
They have to be informed and read Confessions of an Economic Hitman. He kills or orders the jackals in to kill anybody that might try to establish a system that's different than the one in the dominant countries. The dominant countries tend to kill or offset any type of solutions that threaten their existence. Remember that. Any country that has an established system that works for them will try to keep that going and block any other system that you will be faced with continuously. I might be shot at one of my lectures. I don't know. You know, it depends on the way people are brought up, what they hear of what I say or how they interpret what I say. There's not a single philosophy or religion that you can uphold that someone won't hate you for it. Think about that. There's not a single viewpoint that be supported by everybody. There's always people that disagree.
Jacque, I'm assuming you're an atheist. Do you have any criticism of the atheist movement? I would like to hear it.
Only criticism, and they have to inform people on the facts that led them to atheism. And if the people don't want to know about it, you can't reach them.
He said he is assuming that you're not an atheist. Do you have any criticism on the atheist point of view?
The atheist point of view without changing society will not work. What you have to do is inform people, give them information so that they can weigh values. It's something we just do it automatically because we're conditioned to do it. But I don't want people to follow me. I want them to listen to what I say. If it makes sense, do it. But I don't want to build a following. I want the job of people is to convince other people through logic, reason, as to why we select a particular point of view. You know, a scientist doesn't just select it because his cousin said so. He selects a point of view because it works. And you have to show people how to test different things to make sure they work before you install it. And if you're not sure it'll work, you have to do more research until you get a workable system. Like we have 5 or 6 boys and girls that take other kids on a tour through the local forest. And one kid is a leader. He leads the kids through the forest. He tells them about different trees and poisonous plants because he knows more about it than the other kids. Then when you come to a stream, another kid takes over. He knows more about fish and life in the stream. And when you come to rock formation, another kid takes over because he knows more about geology. No one is a permanent leader. It's rotational. In that way, every kid takes part.
How about possible political and military retaliation against the Venus Project?
Well, if they have big enough armies, they can smash the Venus Project. It depends on how well you are able to reach the military. Right now, we're affecting a lot of military people throughout the world. They're beginning to understand the Venus Project. They're inquiring and asking more information. We're not ready to move unless the public's ready to move. You understand? We don't dictate policy. We don't torture people. We don't twist their arm into joining with us. We try to convince them. And if we fail to do that, we won't achieve it. I'm sorry about what I'm saying. I wish people were rational and you can convince them through rational laws and logic, but people are not logical. They're obedient to the system. And you have to wait until a lot of them lose confidence in the system they believed in.
I guess that's about it. I appreciate everybody coming.
Yes, I hope you think about the things I talk about, not just the words, but think about the ideas that I put forth. You have to know your subject before you go before an audience. When you go before an audience to explain the Venus Project, quote from the book, The Best That Money Can't Buy. Use the Venus Project's proposals and deliver them as best you can. And whatever results you get will tell you what you can or cannot talk about. But you want to practice in front of a Venus Project meeting and see if they can make recommendations in your presentation to improve it. That's the only way I know of.
Okay, thanks everyone. We'll see
Thanks
you next
again
week.
for the opportunity of explaining a little more about the project.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jacque and Roxanne. See you next week.